I'm also like, I want to reiterate, I am genuinely happy to see these candidates win, but they are winning because the movement underneath them is propelling them, not because they're uniquely special messengers. The moment like they forget that distinction is the moment they become useless to the people who elected them. And they just become, also, like you said, you're just Democratic Party now. Some stuff happened last week around the issue of what people are calling woke, woke 1.0. Now, this is a new phrase that was floating around Democratic politics last week. You're going to hear it a lot in this segment because suddenly everyone from AOC to Zohran Mamdani is using it to describe 2020, the biggest uprising against police violence in this country's history, like it was some kind of fever dream. So, Zoe, let's get into it. Let's start by playing the clip heard around the world for those who maybe didn't hear it. This is AOC speaking last week about what she titled Woke 1.0.
I have a local city councilman that has this saying, woke one was crazy.
Woke one was crazy. Okay, that's interesting.
And I think that what's important is that we have to assess what
was it? I mean, did the movement go too far with some of those positions? I mean, you briefly supported the idea of defunding the police.
Well, you know, I think that during this time and especially during COVID, there was a huge opening of the Overton window. We were shut down. There was some of the highest unemployment rates that we have seen because of those shutdowns. Yeah. And I think that the doors were really open in trying to entertain any and every policy that was going to get us to a better place. And I actually think that the discussions that were had in that time were quite fruitful. I think that when we talk about crime today, it's fundamentally different than the way that we talked about crime in bringing crime down, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that we all share in the goals of having as low a crime rate as possible. I think that, you know, during lockdown, of course, rhetoric in that time is not rhetoric that we would use today. And I'm grateful that these candidates have the opportunity to present who they are to their electorate and what they're campaigning on in this moment.
So she's famous. I mean, she's so good at word salads. So that's her take on what she has phrased woke one. And just so people know, the context was she was responding to questions about Francesca Hong, who was running for governor of Wisconsin and lost by a small amount. She was a DSA candidate. And anyway, so everyone's like, woke one starts making the rounds. Then suddenly you have Zohran Mamdani asked about it during a press conference by a reporter. And here's what he had to say.
What do you make of that statement? Because you yourself have walked back defund the police. Do you think woke one was crazy?
Look, I think that each person has a responsibility to tell New Yorkers, to tell Americans when they're running for office what they believe. And sometimes what you believe can change. It can develop, it can grow. And I know that there are some for whom they still believe in that. I've made very clear that I do not believe in defunding the police, that I will not be defunding the police. And that to me, delivering critical public safety also looks like working with our police department alongside many other partners. And we've seen over the first 7 months of this administration what that can look like when we're talking about the fewest murders on record in New York City, the fewest shooting incidents on record in New York City. And that, to me, is how we measure a lot of our public safety.
Okay, so you have AOC quoting her local city councilman, I think it's Che Ose, who she's talking about, approvingly saying woke one was crazy. Zohran gets asked directly about walking back, defund the police, and doesn't defend the phrase at all, doesn't defend the moment. He just accepts the framing and moves on. So here's why this matters. 2020 was not some mass psychotic break. It was the largest uprising in modern American history, and it happened because tens of millions of people watched a police officer kneel on George Floyd's neck for over 9 minutes until he died, suffocated to death on camera in broad daylight. That is not crazy. That's the single most logical, most human reaction imaginable, okay? Calling it crazy isn't just like careless language. It's revisionist history. And it's unacceptable from politicians who, by the way, owe their careers to the exact energy they're now describing as some sort of silly aberration that they can just dismiss and move on from. So Zoe, I want to play another clip because this is Zohran Mamdani, not 15 years ago, not 10 years ago, but 3 years ago, okay, in 2023, talking about police militarization. Let's hear him.
The importance for me of international solidarity is that it takes me out of the American political landscape and reminds me just how tame some of the things are that I'm actually calling for or that I support. And it reminds me of the necessity of grounding ourselves in the struggles as opposed to the fights around the struggles. For anyone to care about these issues, we have to make them hyperlocal. We have to make clear that when the boot of the NYPD is on your neck, it's been laced by the IDF. We're in a country where those connections abound, especially in New York City. You have so many opportunities to make clear the ways in which that struggle over there is tied to capital's interest over here.
So that's Zohran Mamdani. Again, in 2023, that's just 3 years ago, talking about how when the boot of the NYPD is on your neck, it has been laced by the Israeli military, connecting police militarization in the US to Israeli military interests abroad, trying to tie the struggle over there to capitalist interests in the US. Compare that to what we just heard him say about defund. Like, that's the distance that this man has traveled in 3 years. And, you know, you actually alerted me to this, Zoe. The New Republic put it really well in a piece. I'm quoting. They say, what started as shit posting, woke one, etc., is being used as a tool with which to discipline the left. It's depressing to see elected officials who have benefited from this leftward shift, including Ocasio-Cortez, indulge that nonsense. But, you know, I'd go further than that. This isn't just distasteful. I think it's lazy politics. Because, you know, defund the police as a phrase might have pulled as like an unpopular slogan, but the underlying idea, which is the idea there is to divert money from this massive policing apparatus into social programs and things like education, that is actually a popular idea. So you can critique the slogan. Maybe you think it's like a stupid slogan. Maybe you think it's a slogan that doesn't do well across the country. That might be true. You can critique it without throwing an entire movement under the bus. And also, let's remember what sits underneath all of this. The US has the biggest prison population on earth, which is connected to that policing apparatus, where people are subjected to what amounts to torture for what are overwhelmingly crimes of poverty. Like, racist police killings didn't stop happening because Democrats found the discourse embarrassing and moved on. Every single thing that people were in the streets about in 2020 is still true today. You're allowed to critique the messaging. You are not allowed to disappear that movement, especially when you rely on it to get elected. So my read here, and this is total speculation, but I think that people like AOC and Zohran and others were coached to say this ahead of the midterms, right? To like put daylight between themselves and between the left. And it doesn't land as a strategy, though. It lands as completely inauthentic because that's exactly what it is. And it raises a very real question. You know, if we let them get away with distancing themselves in this lazy, offensive way from the uprising in 2020 and from defund the police, what stops them from distancing themselves from abolish ICE when that is no longer a popular slogan, or from cutting off weapons to Israel, or from free Palestine? Like, why would we expect people to stick by those views and those ideas and hold them accountable to it when they can't even stay accountable to something that happened not that long ago, the biggest uprising in American history, and they are offensively and insultingly throwing it under the bus like this? Like, this is a very real mechanism playing out in real time before our eyes of a pivot to the right. And if it goes on without any consequence from people like us, you will see them do it again and again. Before I move on to show more clips and say more, Zoe, I'm curious your thoughts.
I mean, I would say that it's not lazy. I would say it's calculated. I think that they might have started. I believe that when they started out, they had genuine aspirations to represent people, maybe even believed in these slogans. But they know in their heart of hearts the only way to survive in the Democratic Party is to toe the line. Um, and despite the fact, and I mean, with every single progressive issue, the Democratic Party base is overwhelmingly in support of abolishing ICE, of ending all U.S. weapon sales to Israel. Is went out in the streets, millions of people in 2020. They know that to get elected, in these in the primaries, to be like the progressive candidate, they have to run on these platforms. And now they know that in order to get that sweet, sweet Democratic Party funding for their campaigns in the midterms, now that they're the candidate, they have to fall in line. And I think that, in addition to pushing back on this, and it's funny because AOC says like the overturn window was so big, and it's like, you are actively closing it. You are deciding
Yeah.
to close the door. Like, you are deciding that this is no longer on the table when literally you are an elected official. You could push for this. You could continue to explain to people why it's important. And you are saying, now I don't believe we should even talk about this. So I think it's calculated. I think they know exactly what they're doing. And I think it's a warning message to everyone who puts stock in allegedly trying to reform the Democratic Party. I know we're going to get to that, but it's just like, come on, people. Like, this is exactly how it was always going to turn out. I don't think we should accept it, but I think that it is not just a joke. It's not just a Twitter joke. It is actually a calculated move to appease this corporate party.
Well, I'm glad that you said that because I'd like to play the next clip.
Seeing a lot of examples of what it can look like to have that focus on the working person. People who understand that affordability isn't just something you say, it's something you have to deliver. And that in doing this, we're not running away from the Democratic Party. We're going back to what the party used to be. You think about FDR and LaGuardia. You think about the New Deal. That's what the Democratic Party once was. That's what it could be again. And if we want to win, I think that's what we have to become.
The Democratic Party is not your friend.
It was the party of slaveholders. That's the party that it was.
It's the party of genocide. This party oversaw the start of the Gaza genocide. Like, look, I still do like Zohran Mamdani. He is very likable. I like what the policies he's proposing. But sheepdogging the growing energy and anger at the corporate Democratic Party, the corporate genocidal Democratic Party, back into the same party is a dead end. This is a corporate genocide-funding party. It is bankrolled by a segment of the ruling class that will never deliver Medicare for all or anything else people actually need unless it is forced to, dragged by its ears, by movements and by pressure from outside the two-party system. Funneling revolutionary energy back into that machine is not a strategy. It is a guarantee of movement death. And we've watched it play out for decades. And like the pivots, Zoe, they keep stacking up. 3 days after Yale released a study showing Medicare for All would save $1 trillion, and more importantly, 114,000 lives every year. 114,000 people would not die every year if we had Medicare for All in the US. 3 days after that study was released, Hakeem Jeffries went on television and said it's not legislation he currently supports. Because Hakeem Jeffries is one of the biggest recipients of corporate PAC money in the Democratic Party. That alone, by the way, should be disqualifying for anybody on the left backing Jeffries for Speaker of the House. But if his subservience
100%.
to a murderous for-profit, but Zoe, if his subservience to a murderous for-profit healthcare industry is not enough to dissuade people from backing him, perhaps it's important to remember this is also a man who has been a consistent and enthusiastic defender of Israeli apartheid and genocide. And again, one of the largest recipients of corporate PAC and pro-Israel money in the House. And yet, AOC, Zohran Mamdani, Brad Lander have all said they'll back Hakeem Jeffries for Speaker of House. Zohran's not even in Congress. Like, why?
Right.
Like, I don't know what you think you get out of that. Like, you could also just like not back him. You could say, hey, I'm not in Congress. It's not my issue. I don't know. But he's actually explicitly come out and said that Hakeem Jeffries should be Speaker of House. So I raise all this because there's a guy called William Lawrence, and he ran in a Democratic primary for Congress in Michigan, and won during the Michigan primaries a couple weeks ago. And after winning his Michigan primary, he went on TV the next day on CNN to say this about Hakeem Jeffries.
And one of the members of the Congressional Black Caucus is Hakeem Jeffries. Have you spoken with him since you won? And do you plan to vote for him to be the next Speaker of the House?
I do plan to vote for him to be the next speaker, and I look forward to speaking with him soon.
So you haven't spoken with him yet.
Why? Like, why?
By the way,
Why? Like,
Rania, this is someone.
Yeah.
No, this is someone who comes from the environmental movement, who was part of the anti-pipeline struggle. This is someone who I have met in the context of the struggle, and to just see how slippery that slope is. You just get in, you run for a Democratic Party primary, and then the next day you're supporting someone who supports genocidal war criminals and believes that Medicare for all. No, let's continue to gouge the American people and not give them health care.
I mean, look, I want to be clear here because like a lot of people get all wrapped up in the personalities and like they know somebody. And I actually said this on Twitter. I quote tweeted that video and I was like, what's the point of giving away your leverage like this? Like, if you're going to be an insurgent candidate, why would you do this? And people messaged me privately and they were like, no, he's really great. Like, like he just wants to win in the general. Like, he's not a bad person. I don't care. This is not about if this guy is a good or a bad person. If William Lawrence or AOC or Zohran Mamdani, this is not about whether they are good or bad individuals. This is about problematic behavior that is going to lead to the death of movements. That has nothing to do with individuals. And you're right, this guy is actually like one of the founders of the Sunrise Movement. He's been great on Palestine. But the day after you win a primary, you're going to go pledge loyalty to Hakeem Jeffries? Like, what? I will continue to ask this question. What is the strategic value in giving away your leverage before you've even taken office? I genuinely do not understand the logic of that. And furthermore, the two pillars right now of these left insurgents' candidacies are being opposed to the genocide in Gaza, supporting a free Palestine, weapons embargoes on Israel, right? That's one. The second one is Medicare for all. So Hakeem Jeffries is horrible on both of those two major pillars of why you're running for office. Why are you giving him your support like this? He is exactly what you are trying to defeat, supposedly. I want to play another clip, and this is not about William Lawrence, the person. This is about what this behavior represents. Let's play the next clip of William Lawrence talking about the DSA.
So you have the support of Bernie Sanders, but you're not running as a Democratic Socialist, but you were once a member of the Democratic Socialists of America. When did you leave that organization and what drove you away?
I let my membership lapse because I just want to make very clear that I'm here to represent the people of this district and focus on the issues that are bringing people together. And we just want to stay laser focused on these issues that we're hearing concern about all across the 7th District, the cost of housing, the cost of healthcare and gasoline and groceries, and the fact that we have criminals, frankly, in government who are getting rich on the public expense, and there's no accountability. So we're here to unite the 7th District by beating Barrett in November.
So when did you leave the Democratic Socialists of America?
It was within the last month I let my membership lapse. I've got a lot of respect for DSA and the work that they're doing around the country, but I felt a need to make it very clear that the platform we're running on here is the one that has come up based on the conversations we're having across the 7th District.
So did you let that membership expire because of the general election?
No, it's just because I want to make clear to my constituents that I'm here to represent them. And my one and only job is to represent the people of the district by stopping these AI data centers, stopping these stupid wars around the world, investing in a life we can actually afford.
But where do you differ from the Democratic Socialists of America?
You know, I don't want to comment on any, I'm happy to comment on any particular policy if you're of interest, but the point is that, no, I'm an organizer and coalition builder, and we are laser focused here on reaching all the voters across this district with an agenda which is really being built on the priorities we hear coming up locally.
I mean, that's just painful to watch. Like, here he is putting
You gotta
distance
have
between
some
himself and the
convictions,
DSA.
buddy.
I mean,
Sorry.
the DSA is like the organization that helped build his political base in the first place. So it's just so stunning to watch him, like to just watch that happen so fast, like overnight. He's like, yeah, I'm not a member anymore. I stopped being one a month ago. Like, it's like, dude, like, what are you going to stand by? How can I expect you to stand by anything? You can't even stand by the people who just literally, like, you couldn't get elected without DSA, like, knocking on doors for you. And you're just going to be like,
Also,
yeah, no, I'm not with them anymore. Like, what?
And if you're not part of DSA, then you're part of the Democratic Party, and you're allegedly loyal to like this base of people that you are elected to serve. But at the end of the day, who's going to be in your ear? It's the Democratic Party, and you're no longer part of the DSAs. You don't have an organization that's, pushing you into dialogue. So this is, I mean, it's like this whole myth of like changing the Democratic Party from inside, pushing it to the left. It's like they're just jumping into it and jumping out of the left. It's not.
Also, we also have like a very real history of showing that that's not possible. Like, it hasn't worked in 40 years. I don't know why you think something different is going to happen with the Democratic Party now, but I'm also like, I want to reiterate, I am genuinely happy to see these candidates win, but they are winning because the movement underneath them is propelling them, not because they're uniquely special messengers. The moment like they forget that distinction is the moment they become useless to the people who elected them. And they just become,
Also,
like you said, you're just Democratic Party now.
Also, just to point out, he's, essentially saying that being a socialist is unpopular, and that couldn't be further from the truth right now. Like in the United States, socialism is actually increasingly popular, especially among young people. So this idea, I mean, he's essentially, red scaring. He's just buying into this, red scare mentality, like can't touch anything that says socialism, when in reality, again, like people are drawn to not only socialist ideas and socialist policies, but actually entire system change. So it's again like another way of just giving away your leverage, not even giving people the opportunity to see what that means in practice. So it's sad.
Yeah, instead of playing into Red Scare, maybe you could try to talk about the policies you support. Like, and I wanna talk about something else related to this, because another thing that happened that got a lot of backlash was when Abdul El-Sayed, who won the Senate Democratic primary against Haley Stevens, which I was very supportive of. Still, I hope he wins in the general against Mike Rogers. I think it would be fantastic to have this guy in the Senate, particularly since the other option is Mike Rogers. But I also really like what Abdul El-Sayed is promoting and standing for. But Kamala Harris endorsed him, and then he very enthusiastically embraced that endorsement. And I really couldn't get past that. I understand the pragmatic case here, like in the sense that you need every endorsement you can get to win in November. Okay, like fine, I'm willing to accept that with certain like red lines. And I think Kamala Harris is a red line, because this is the same Kamala Harris who spat in our faces in 2024, who never took a shred of accountability for her role in enabling a genocide that she still, as far as I understand, supports. She represents everything Abdul al-Sayed has built his campaign in opposition to. And on top of that, she lost Michigan in 2024. So I don't even follow the strategic logic of boasting about her endorsement in his own state.
Right.
So like, and I hope this isn't the start of a broader pivot to the right. So I will say this again in a different way, because I feel like it's worth reiterating this in different ways so it gets absorbed by people that need to hear it if they're listening. I hope they are. It would serve these insurgent candidates well to remember why they are winning in the first place. It is not because they are leading some organic leftward shift inside the Democratic Party. It's because the movement built that shift alongside the gigantic sacrifice of the Palestinian people. For nearly 3 years now, we have watched Palestinians be annihilated on our phone streams live, reviving the political fortunes of the very people who helped enable that mass killing would be an unforgivable betrayal of every orphan child, every amputee still dodging US-funded bombs in Gaza right now. I do not say that lightly. I know the counter argument that this like consolidates the vote heading into the general election. It builds trust with Black voters. I know these arguments. I got these arguments in my Twitter feed. I'm still not convinced. This woman lost Michigan, okay? Opposition to genocide in Gaza was a centerpiece, remains a centerpiece of Abdul's platform. The Palestine Solidarity Movement was central to propelling this man's campaign in the first place. Embracing one of the genocide's most prominent defenders risks alienating the very base that got him elected. Don't those votes still matter? And practically speaking, this does more for Kamala Harris's potential 2028 ambitions than it even does for Abdul. And to be clear, I am not saying he should have like flatly rejected the endorsement, you know, said thanks, but no thanks, F you. But the way he embraced it does not add up to me. Maybe I'm totally wrong. I don't think I am. We'll see how it plays out. And I'd also, by the way, push back on the framing that this was some sort of necessary thing to do to win Black voters. Because first of all, what if it costs him pro-Palestine voters in the process? It's just like, if that's the thinking, you are literally like not even giving value to the base that you need. But the better long-term strategy, I would say, the better long-term strategy to building, you know, support in the Black community would be building actual real relationships with Black leaders who haven't presided over unpopular wars and genocides. And then doing the work to show how your politics actually materially benefits working class and oppressed people. You know, that's harder than a photo op endorsement, I guess, but it's, you know, what actually needs to and should happen. Sorry, go ahead.
No, and a lot of Black people in the United States are against the genocide. So it's not like one or the other. It's just like a false Kamala Harris, I do not think, especially prosecutor in chief, does not speak for, I would hazard to say, Black America, given the fact that she presided over a policy of mass incarceration in California.
Yes.
So
the top cop, they called her. I think that was like what she proudly liked to emphasize herself as, Kamala Harris, top cop. But like, I just to like emphasize those here, Zoe, like where I'm coming from. Like I still like, and I'm saying this because of the amount of backlash I got for criticizing this in particular, and then the whole William Lawrence thing. Like, guys, chill the fuck out. Like, I still want Abdul to win, obviously. I do still like Zohran, though, even if I didn't, like, calm down. I would definitely take AOC over Chuck Schumer any day of the week. But liking these people is not the same as giving them a pass. Every dollar of corporate and special interest money aimed at them is designed to pull them to the right. And it will keep pulling until something pulls back harder. And that something is us. Our job is not to cheerlead these people. It's not to go rah-rah at everything they say. First of all, we're journalists. Yes, we have opinions, but we're journalists. But we're also tied to movements. Our job is to hold these politicians accountable to the movements they're building their careers on top of. And when they look out at the streets, they should see they have no other choice but to defund, but to abolish, but to free Palestine. That doesn't happen if we continue to make excuses every time they pivot away from the left. And do not forget, the Democratic Party does not want the left. It has made that very clear.
Yeah.
I'm sure a lot of people saw Third Way, this organization that is like basically, the moderate Democrats, launched this $15 million multi-year campaign specifically targeting DSA. I'm talking opposition research, polling, messaging, the works. Their co-founder, Matt Bennett, said outright that DSA poses, quote, a mortal danger to the party and called its ideas dangerous and its politics toxic. This comes directly on the heels of Abdul's primary win in Michigan. By the way, Abdul's not even in DSA, nor does he call himself a socialist. He says he's a capitalist, but apparently not good enough. But regardless, that win in Michigan came on the wave of DSA-aligned wins in Congress. So it's not paranoia on our part here. That is the Democratic Party telling us on the record what it thinks of the left flank. It depends on for votes and volunteers. And I say this also as someone who has watched this play out my entire adult life. I was excited for Obama. His middle name was Hussein. They told me he was a Muslim socialist. I was very excited. He ran against the Iraq War, more importantly. But then what did he do when he got into office? He escalated drone strikes. He normalized targeted killings, including of American citizens without trial, and started new wars of his own. And not to even mention the domestic corporate policies he pushed. I don't want to watch this movie again, right? And again, this was never about individuals. Forget how much you like these people. Forget how much you're mesmerized by Zohran's smile, okay? It's about a party machine that cannot be reformed from the inside. It can only be pressured from the outside by people who refuse to let it forget why it needs us in the first place. And that means holding these people accountable, yes, even during election season.